You can't sleep at night. You can't dream your dream. Your fingerprints on file, left clumsily at the scene. Your own worst enemy has come to town. Your own worst enemy has come.
All right, everybody. Hey, Doug here. I'm doing a live feed of the podcast that I'm creating for the TikTok Take with Doug Pagitt, my podcast. And this is on Donald Trump being elected the President of the United States on Tuesday. It's now Friday. I've referred to this as the Friday after the Tuesday when the world ended. Here's what I'm going to do. I've written down a number of thoughts that I want to have for the podcast, and I'm broadcasting these live to you. There's going to be two parts to this. Part one is where I see us right now, the trouble I think that we're in, the situation that we find ourselves in. I'll share my own anxieties about that. Part two, which will be on a separate live feed but on the same podcast, will include how do we move forward. And I think there's 5 alternatives for what could happen with a Trump presidency. So I found this very helpful to be thinking these things through, and I'll just tell you that I think it's really bad. I am not a Trump supporter. I opposed his presidency. I oppose it today. I do think there are 5 alternatives, though, and we can talk about those here in a minute. I will also say that I can't stop thinking about the ramifications of this. Like many of you, I'm finding myself in a situation where there are hardly 20 minutes that go by where I'm not saying to myself regularly, stop thinking about this. Almost everything I'm doing, the way my friend Tom Olson put it is, he said he lost his job once in his life as an adult, and every moment that he woke up in his bed or driving in a car and thought of it, the first thought that came to his mind was, I lost my job. That's how I feel about this. Almost everything I do, I opened the refrigerator last night to pull some food out, or yesterday morning to make a smoothie. And as I'm reaching for the yogurt, I'm like, should I have the maple yogurt or should I have the plain yogurt? But Donald Trump is the president. I don't know which. Like, it is that deep inside of me. And I can't stop thinking about it. And I've wondered why that is. Why has this struck me so deeply? One of the reasons, I think, is I was a huge Hillary supporter. I've been a Hillary supporter since 2008. I was heart sunk when she didn't get the nomination in 2008. I was for her. I like her as a person. I wanted her to be the president. I wanted a woman to be the president. I thought that was really important. I wanted a continuation of the Obama presidency and policies and ideas. I didn't want Donald Trump, all of those things together. And I'm like, is this all it is? Like, am I just bitter because it didn't go my way? Checking myself on that. I don't think so. I think it's more than that. I feel like it's just wrong on every front that Donald Trump is the president. I don't think he's competent. I can't even sometimes get myself to say Donald Trump is the president of the United States without feeling the need to sort of laugh it off. Like, that can't be real. Now, look, I understand that this is real trauma for me, and I'm not underplaying other kinds of trauma, but it really is experiencing to me as some kind of trauma. All of the classic signs of denial and anger and bargaining and depression and then finally acceptance, they all are swirling around. And I know that grief doesn't go in that order, but these are experiences that people have. And I'm experiencing all of them. There are times where I just feel like this can't be true. And sometimes I want to go check the vote count, or I want some people to try to pull off some miracle to stop the Electoral College. Like, I'm in that level of denial about this. I find myself angry at our country. I'm driving down the road and looking at people and thinking, were you the ones that voted for him? That's no way to live. I find myself angry at the Hillary campaign that I was such a supporter of, and I naming the names of campaign managers and campaign chairmen, and if she knew that she had such low approval ratings and couldn't get the vote out and was going to be so far below the Obama numbers, why didn't they? I mean, I'm just all over the place, and I'm trying to bargain somehow that, well, maybe there's a way that this could change, and depression and sadness and just anxiety seem to be the most common. So maybe you're feeling that way too. And I'll just say that that's where I am right now. Now, some of you might be listening to this days later and you've worked through these issues and have come around the corner on this. Okay, there's a couple of things that I'm trying to keep in mind, and maybe this would be helpful for you to keep in mind as well. The way I feel about Donald Trump, I recognize that a number of other people have felt this way about other presidents. They have felt this way about Johnson when he became the president after the assassination of Kennedy. There were those who felt this way when Gerald Ford had to become the president after the resignation of Richard Nixon. There are people who felt this way about Richard Nixon. There are people who felt this way about Ronald Reagan. There are certainly people who felt this way about Jimmy Carter. There are people who felt this way about George Bush. There are people who felt this way about Barack Obama. Like, I know people who thought these things about all of those presidents, and I keep saying to myself, but we made it. We made it through. That there were all of these ways that the presidents were mocked, that Gerald Ford was a clown, that Ronald Reagan was an actor, that George Bush was the village idiot that got lost, that Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer from Georgia, that Barack Obama was a community organizer and he didn't have any qualifications at all. What had he ever done in his life? I know people that hold those views, and they hold those views very strongly. Now, I happen to think that even with all of that, Donald Trump is out of scope of these. It's hard for me to imagine that he's going to be anywhere close to the competency of these presidents. But I don't know. Maybe. Maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a possibility. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I need to get out publicly a little bit of my grief. You know, Hillary Clinton has this famous ad where she's with a young child who's worried about, I think it was immigration or maybe her mom's job. And Hillary pulls a little girl close and says to her, "Let me do the worrying about those big things. You live your life. Let me do the worrying." That's how some of us want our president to be. Like, there are things that our president's going to take care of. There's things that are in the president's to-do list. There's things that fit there. And we elect the people who are going to take care of those things. I wonder if where we are is that we can't say that any longer, that maybe we can't outsource the "it's going to be okay" to the president, like some of us have done over the last 8 years. Barack Obama will take care of this. Maybe it is that we have to say we have to help him. We have to make sure this is not a failed presidency. A failed presidency would be bad for the world. It would be bad for the most vulnerable in our country and around the world. It would be bad for those who are doing well. It would be bad for those who are barely hanging on. It would be bad for everyone. We have a system where the presidency matters. And to all the people who say, you know, the president doesn't really do that much, that's just simply not true. The president does a lot. And maybe we have to say that we have to help this president to be successful. This is, I think, how Barack Obama put it yesterday. I've had a hard time listening to any news. I've kept it all off. I can't look at a newspaper. I can't look at a news feed. I haven't even been on Facebook. I just don't want to see anything. I am in that place of just denial. But I heard someone tell me that Barack Obama said to President-elect Trump, "We all need you to succeed." And I've also heard that perhaps he's going to take it seriously, but I don't want to jump ahead to the next. But let me just say a few things about Trump. People vote for president for a lot of reasons. So there are people who voted for Donald Trump, and a lot of them. In the states where it mattered, more people than voted for Hillary. Around the country, a statistical tie. Maybe at the end of all the counting, he will even have won the popular vote. But there are more people in the states where we know that it matters, where you can't just run up the numbers like in some of the big states, New York and California and so on. But in the states where it mattered, more people voted for him than for her. I don't understand that. I don't know how that's possible. I keep thinking about the third party, and I keep having really bad thoughts about the third party. I keep thinking about the people who said things like, well, I just not all that enthused, so I'm going to go for my enthusiasm. And they use their vote as personal expression and not as an instrument of democracy. And it makes me crazy. Future podcasts, I'll maybe talk about some of that. But people voted for Donald Trump for many reasons. And I want to believe that of the 52 or 54 million people that voted for him, it's not because they're racist. It's not because they're misogynist. It's not because they're sexist. It's not because they're xenophobic. It's not because they really want to see some kind of an alternative right, white nationalist thing take off in this country. Now, I'm telling myself that that's the case. There's deep fear in me that there's too many people with those views, or that those views are going to carry too much power in our society going forward. I don't want that to be the reason. I want there to be people who voted for all kinds of reasons, and I worry that people like me are not going to take that seriously. The other reasons that people voted for Donald Trump. Somehow that people told themselves that maybe someone without experience, someone from a different sector could be the president. I don't know. Maybe they're right. I mean, here's the thing. Donald Trump was right about so many things that I said to myself, there's no way he could be right about these things. I still tell myself he couldn't have been right about these things. Now, maybe I'm in denial, or maybe there's something else going on, that he was right about these things, that people really would vote for him over her, that people really would set aside all these things that he would do because they wanted this kind of change, that people really did live in the comfort and security of all the goodness that has been in our presidency for the last 8 years, in my view, and they just said, well, you know what, maybe we can get by without it. Maybe we don't need that thing. Now, I fear that it's somebody remodeling their own home and they pulled out a load-bearing wall that they actually needed, and they just wanted to have a bigger kitchen, and so they ripped out this wall, and their ceiling is going to collapse, and their roof is going to fall in, and their house is going to be destroyed. I worry that that's the case, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. I worry about what kind of country wouldn't hear the things he said and say that just disqualifies you. It just disqualifies you. I don't understand that. I'm a big proponent of the wisdom of the crowds. I like this book called with a subtitle, What Happens When the Smartest People in the Room Are the Room. I really do believe that the more we pool our collective thinking, the better off we are, that we don't outsource the goodness of the world or smarts or intelligence or the future to elites. Now, I fear that what happened here is that we didn't have everyone in the room, that people sat out the election, that they didn't put their voice in, or maybe it's the other way. Maybe there's some wisdom in all of this that we didn't understand. Now, a few thoughts on Hillary. It seemed to me she did everything right in that campaign. Now, I was arguing with a friend the other night that she obviously didn't. I was making the point. She obviously didn't because she lost so badly. I mean, she got swamped in the Electoral College. It was so bad. So something didn't happen. And maybe it was sexism. I think that's it. I really think people just couldn't vote for a woman. But others tell me no, she's like a layer cake of problems. For some it was sexism. For some it was her personality. For some it was her politics. For some it was her way of surrounding herself in some insular, paranoid group of people that wouldn't let the truth get in. For other people, they just thought she had too much trouble and baggage. For some people, they didn't want there to be another Clinton. They didn't like this idea of a Bush and a Bush and a Clinton and a Clinton. We don't want dynasties. Maybe all of that pooled together could be true. I worry about the Democratic Party. As a Democrat, I worry about it. It's going to collapse under its own weight. And I've realized something. The Democratic Party will not hold together around ideas. It needs to be a party led by leaders, by people. People get around those that they're passionate about. No matter what the ideas, obviously the ideas that she has were the Democratic ideas. They were Barack Obama's ideas. She wanted to continue those, but people didn't say it was enough for the ideas. They wanted the right leader. That's something that has to be learned. It's a lesson that really does have to be learned. So I wonder, who are we that we would elect Donald Trump? Maybe in the long run, we're going to see there was some great wisdom. Maybe in the long run, there's something good that comes out of all of this. It's super hard for me to see it right now. But I do think there are 5 alternatives for how this could go. I'm going to stop and restart the stream right now so that those of you who just want to listen to that part and don't want to listen to my comments on how difficult I feel that it is, on the live stream, we'll be back in a moment with the 5 alternatives for moving forward, 5 alternative realities that could come into play. Maybe one of these, I think one of these 5 is going to be the case. I think one of these 5 will be what's going to happen in a Trump presidency. And I have real hope for those. And then a few thoughts on the ways that we can move forward. So thanks for being part of the stream. And if you're on the podcast, just hold tight through this little break, and we'll be right back. This is the TikTok Take with Doug Pagitt. All right, welcome back to the TikTok Take with Doug Pagitt. I'm live streaming this on Facebook, which I'm going to be doing with many of my podcasts, trying to give people options to see it here on their phone or on their computer while it happens, and you'll get a little bit of the behind-the-scenes views. But if you want the podcast itself, you can look up Doug Pagitt in any of your podcast streams or TikTok Take. The TikTok Take. Okay, Donald Trump was elected the president on Tuesday. It's now Friday. I'm considering this the Friday after the Tuesday when the world ended. And I think there are 5 alternate realities that could take place. And some friends of mine that like to hold to the multiverse say all 5 of these are actually happening. So I want to live in the one that's the 5th. Just give you that hint right now. All 5 of these seem nearly impossible to me that these have happened. There's a Netflix show called The Man in the High Castle, and it's the show I really like watching, and it's sort of a speculative fiction show about what happened if the Nazis won the war, World War II. And it's terrifying. And then you start to realize that it's a part of an alternate reality narrative where in one world there's one thing happening, in another universe there's another thing happening, and that the Allies won the war, and they start to cross over to each other. So anyway, that's running through my mind, a little bit of perhaps fiction, sci-fi. But anyway, in the world that I'm living in right now, Donald Trump won the presidency. In the world that we're all living in, Donald Trump won the presidency. I think there are 5 alternatives that could go forward. Here's alternative number 1. This could be one of the paths that it takes. It could be that Donald Trump gets in such legal trouble over the next month and a half or 2 months that it prevents him from becoming the president and taking the oath of office. I know a lot of people are holding out for this. There have been rumors about some sexual assault that he's been accused of. I don't even know if those are true, that he's been accused of those, that he has this court case about Trump University, that maybe there's some things in his taxes, that maybe because he has now won the election that people are going to look deeper into his investments and into his international relationships. And maybe those things will prevent him from becoming the president of the United States, that he will not put his hand on that Bible. If he even chooses a Bible, I'm guessing he will, but who knows, that he will not stand there with his hand up, with Barack Obama standing beside him, with the Supreme Court Justice Roberts issuing him the oath of office, that he just won't be able to take the oath. Maybe that will happen. Then it'll have to be Mike Pence, which that path does not have very good options in front of it. Path number 2. He takes the oath of office, but he is so incompetent, he is so selfish, he is so narcissistic that he implodes as the president, that the things that he does, that the things that he says are so consistent with the way the campaign worked, that he uses his power of the presidency to do things that are so outlandish and ridiculous and outside of constitutional bounds that there becomes some sort of act of Congress of impeachment, something that disqualifies him after he's become the president. And that would throw our country into a constitutional crisis. Now, we've been through this stuff before. Nixon, impeached, had to resign. Clinton, impeached, didn't have to resign. Others have done just horrendous things. Now look, you go back and look at the presidencies and the things that people did, Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon and the way that they behaved, Ronald Reagan with Iran-Contra, Bush and all the things that went on with the vice president's office working against the Defense Department. I mean, there's crazy stuff that has gone on in our presidency, and none of it led to constitutional crisis that collapsed our country. Let's trust that that's not the case here, that it does something so damaging that it damages the presidency and the country for good. But that could be alternative too, that he implodes because of his incompetency and selfishness and narcissism. That could be true. Alternative number 3, he tries to do all this crazy shit that he said he was going to do, and Congress actually rises up and opposes him. That Republicans of good conscience, that Democrats of good conscience, that independents of good conscience come together and say, you're not going to do that stuff. That they box in the presidency, that they box him in such a way that Congress is working against him and he can't get any of that stuff done. He wants it, he calls for it, but he can't get it done. That he turns into Bush who wanted immigration reform, or Obama who wanted immigration reform, or Obama who wanted a better kind of healthcare system, or wanted some tax over. He just gets boxed in on everything, and that the Senate and the Congress and the House stop him from doing it. Maybe that's how it's going to go. That could be path number 3. Path 1, legal troubles keep him from taking the oath. Path 2, he is so incompetent that he sends us into a legal crisis. Path number 3, he tries all of it, but people of good conscience in the Senate and the House come together and they stop him from doing it. All of these seem far-fetched, right? If you pay a lot of attention. But alternative number 4, he tries to do these things, but he's shown to be so incompetent by the people around him, he can't even get these pieces of legislation put together. He has no philosophy, and therefore he's being barraged every day by different forces, by different lobbying groups, by different senators, by different staff members, by people inside of his cabinet, by people inside of his inner circle, that it's such backbiting he never even gets any of this legislation pulls together. And that we don't just have a do-nothing Congress, we have a do-nothing presidency because he can't get his act together. So these things never come forward. He tries to pull it together, but he realizes how hard it is to be the president, that he's not prepared, that the people that he puts in cabinet positions and the people that he puts inside the White House staff can't pull it off, that they can't get it together. We've seen this in presidencies before, that they're just near on incompetent to make it work. Maybe that's what's going to happen, alternative number 4. Or alternative number 5. Like many people, he turns out to disappoint his base. That he turns out not to be the president that the people who voted for him wanted him to be. That they say, he betrayed us. I can't believe he betrayed us. Maybe there is a Donald Trump that surprises us, and he actually becomes the more moderate guy that some of us thought that he was just by hearing him in political conversations over the last 25 years, that maybe he turns out to be something more than what we ever heard. Maybe this was all a clown show shtick that he was putting on. Maybe there's a chance that the Donald Trump that is going to take the oath of office is not the one who ran around stumping. That maybe all of that was really professional wrestling kind of persona. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe he surprises all of us by not being the person, and the old Donald comes out, the one who said, look, I'm a pragmatist. We're just going to get some things done. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe no Supreme Court members die or choose to resign. And he only can appoint one, and the balance of the court remains as it has been. And then 4 years from now, when Elizabeth Warren or someone else becomes a president, and by the way, Elizabeth Warren, you should have announced yesterday, I am running for the presidency of the United States, and everything I do over the next 4 years is a part of this campaign. And come on, people, I'm with you, and I want you with me, and give us something to hook our wagon to. It's going to be a podcast coming up in the future. But no Supreme Court justices resign. None of them die. That he is actually more competent than he let on. In this alternative number 5, he's not the guy that he was in the campaign trail, and that he's actually more competent. Every president that we have had, people have talked about them being incompetent. You could hear all of them. You have Bubba in Clinton. You have a community organizer. You have the guy who doesn't like to read books in Bush. You have the peanut farmer and the actor. You have all of these people, and they actually stepped up, and there was something in them that was more competent than the people who opposed him ever thought was possible. Maybe that's what's going to go on. I mean, look, I oppose Donald Trump on almost everything about who he is and what he has said that he wants to do as the presidency. So please don't think that somehow I'm some deep sympathizer here by saying this. But he was right about the mood of the country. Let's give him that. He said, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to win those Rust Belt states. And he did. He knew something that the rest of us didn't know. The rest of the system that said, hey, we know what's going on. All the pundits, all the pollsters, all the professionals who are Democrats and independents, everybody, it seems, even the Republicans, everybody seems, except Michael Moore and a couple other people, said this is not possible and it will not happen. But he was right. Donald Trump was right about this. And the guy pulled off a campaign that got more votes in the states that mattered than Hillary Clinton with all of her expertise. And he did it with ridiculous people around him. I mean, this is terrifying to me. This is terrifying to me, that this is possible, that somehow he has the capacity to do more and to know more and to move people to vote for him than all of the people who are supposed to be of great expertise could possibly pull out. Maybe he finds a way to do the job with his limitations. Maybe he really is a smart enough guy. Maybe all of that stuff that he was doing was making him look like an idiot, somehow was a part of some master plan. Now, I'm not sure about all that, but maybe he turns out to be more competent than we ever thought possible. And that he's not nearly as bizarre in what he wants and desires and demands for this country. Maybe he's actually going to be somebody who can pull this off. Maybe in a few years we're going to look back and say, you know, it is stunning. How is it possible that Donald Trump was actually a decent president? I want that alternative 5 to be true. But look, all 5 of these, they seem impossible to me. Whether he doesn't take the oath of office or he implodes in the first 90 days or year and a half because of his incompetency and his narcissism, it seems impossible to me that he tries to get all this done and the Congress can actually come together and stop him. It seems impossible to me that he's going to put together such incompetency that he's stymied from ever even getting his policies put in front of the American people. And it seems impossible to me that he's more qualified than we ever thought. But this whole thing seems impossible to me. The fact that I'm recording this right now makes me feel like I need to go through a space-time portal into another reality. Because none of this seems possible. Here's what I know is possible, though. We all can do something. We can all do something with our lives. All of us have choices about how we're going to live. Now, look, for some of us, our roles are going to change. For some of us, we're going to start to engage in ways that we never did before. For others of us, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, and we're going to do it with more passion. For other people, we're going to hold out hope. For some people, we're going to oppose Donald Trump at every turn in every way, and we started that on Tuesday night, and we're not going to stop that until he leaves office in 2021, January of 2021, of 2021. We're going to oppose him all the way. For other people, you're going to work for specific outcomes. For some people, you're going to point to a better future or an alternative future. For some people, you're going to avoid this altogether and you're just going to move on with your life and not pay any more attention. For some people, you're going to dig in and do even more. And here's what I hope. No matter what roles our friends have, no matter what roles we take, no matter what roles other people take, we recognize that we all need to do our thing. This is not just a problem to be solved. This is a crisis that demands multiple responses, and all of us need to do the things that we're called to do, and I hope we don't turn on each other. For me, I know what this means. This means that I'm going to work even harder to change the minds of religious people. I've realized I can't change the minds of everybody in this country. I wouldn't even try. Shelley was saying last night to me, like, do we fool ourselves that somehow we can be people who are changing the world? And I said, yeah, I don't think we can change the world, but maybe we can change this country. I want to change the minds of religious people. Religious people had an awful lot to do with this. And I don't want that to be the case in 2021. When we swear in another president in 2021, I want there to be religious people who now are thinking differently about their actions in the voting booth and their actions in their homes and how they work and how they think about it. And I want to recruit progressive religious people to join together and stop dividing and starting to make the kind of world. I want to use a whole series of broadcasts. I'm setting up my basement in a whole new way so that I can be much more aggressive in the video, the audio, the sound, the pictures, everything I want to push out into the world. I want to recruit a whole lot of other people in with me. Maybe we'll start a broadcast station. Maybe we'll put a whole bunch of podcasts together so that we start to have an aggressive, alternative, progressive view of the world that people can tap into and be proud of and talk about. Those are the things that I want to do. I'm going to keep working with religious people. I don't know what you're going to do, but whatever it is, we need you to do it. like to be a person that says we should exist to be a benefit and blessing to all the world. And that means that when we've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back, we're going to still be a benefit and blessing to the world. We're going to keep pushing forward. We're going to keep progressing into the world that we should live in. We're not going to stop. That this has never been a country that has formed simply around the presidency. It is a we the people. But the role of the presidency has become increasingly important in our country and in our time, and I think it matters. And that terrifies me. So we have to bolster up the rest of it if we have to carry President Trump. If we have to be the people who are going to say, you know what? The people side need to carry a little more of this. So every one of us filled with anxiety, know that there can be hope. Every one of us who are filled with fear, know that love drives out fear. For every one of us who is terrified about the future that our children are going to live in, let's make sure that they have alternatives that they can take hold of. For those of us who really thought it was important for a whole lot of reasons that we have a woman president and not a misogynist as a president, let's make that happen in 2021. Let's make ourselves be the people who make the world that we want to live in. This is a TikTok Take podcast from Doug Pagitt and the live stream. Thanks, folks, for being part of all of it. Future's ours. All right, friends on the podcast alone. This isn't going on the live stream. For the podcast portion, no music. No music this week. No music on this week's podcast. I have so many songs I could play, so many songs I think would fit, so many songs that would seem good and right. I just can't do them right now. I just think we need to have a little silence, need to have a little quiet. I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm really holding out for alternative number 5. It's the only one that seems reasonable and possible to me. So at the end of this podcast, if you don't have something else that just rolls right up, maybe just take a few minutes and breathe, pray, contemplate, wish, remember, dream. All right, TikTok Take with Doug Pagitt.